Well, hello there, Arcadian friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics on Monday, September 20th of all dates. Certainly a wild one in the financial markets. Although, of course, if you're just logging on to CNBC tonight, just taking a quick glance, you see a lot of green there. Keep in mind, these are the futures. So if you just logged on, you didn't click over to this tab where you saw the real carnage today. These are the kind of things that often get missed in today's financial environment, where a couple of weeks ago they mentioned Fed governors may have been front-running trades before they started tapering, conceivably even last week, if that's when Janet Yellen and the Treasury really ran out of money. A lot of unanswered questions, although the VIX, look at that color coding there today, a lot of the indices down. VIX was up quite a bit. If you measure the VIX of the VIX, that was up even more. Then if you take the ultra short-term VIX, well, we'll leave that aside, because before we get started, I do want to mention that this video, so we can be completely transparent, was brought to you by BlackRock. But no, not these guys, not BlackRock Inc. I mean, you heard, I wouldn't obviously represent them to people I care about, because some of you heard what happened when we tried to get some of our silver questions answered. So the secret decoder, apparently, if you type in silver, then you can see AHZO-FF for BlackRock Silver, or BRC-V for BlackRock Silver, or BKRRF for BlackRock Silver. You can always verify in today's financial culture, where you never know if you're getting the real thing. But fortunately, Andrew Pollard of BlackRock Silver, who put his name and face to these things, unlike anyone from BlackRock, the other, I'll leave them nameless. So there are the tickers right up there. If you would like more information, again, make your own decisions, because it's tricky sometimes to know why anybody would want to invest in silver. Now, silver hasn't even made it to the hot spot yet in CNBC. But if we tick on gold, oh, that's nice. Silver's green. Gold is up $1.29999, just barely a fraction there. Who knows? Maybe it'll accelerate over 1800 one of these days. Silver get back over 24. I know it was flat. And yeah, I mean, certainly palladium was up over $2,000 a couple of days ago. So we'll see if we can figure out what could account for any of this in the news, because stock futures are flat following the S&P 500's worst day since May, with the Fed meeting ahead. Also, Democrats will put a debt limit suspension in bill that aims to prevent a government shutdown. Now, I know some of you thought it was silly that I read this letter last week. Apologize for the internet connection while doing Silverfest and moving, finding a safe home, recovering, and also digging through Janet Yellen's lawyer speak, where it sure seemed like she acknowledged exactly which government agencies: the Civil Service Retirement and Disability Fund, the Postal Service Retiree, the Government Service Fund of Federal Employee Savings Thrift. Wow, that's a mouthful. But just to save some time on this one, she was talking about the debt limit after the debt limit was reinstated on August 1st, because it had been suspended. Treasury began employing certain extraordinary measures, which are authorized by some law and were used previously. Doesn't make it right, in my opinion, but once all available measures and cash were fully exhausted, the United States would be unable to meet its obligations for the first time in history. Our estimates of the period of time that the extraordinary measures will last have been refined in recent weeks, although they're continue to be subject to considerable uncertainty. That is for sure when you're dealing with the U.S. government. And I mean, they can't even figure the level of corporate and individual taxes due September 15th. I wonder if September 15th, the only other date in this letter mentioned, is actually when they ran out of the ability to do those extraordinary measures. Which is interesting, because if they couldn't do that and the Fed actually got their digital printing press got cut off that day, one could make the argument, conceivably, if that all added up, that the Fed has already started tapering. Of course, there are lines of independence between the Fed and the Treasury. We can trust that because Janet Yellen was on both. Here we did get an update. Janet Yellen, she didn't mention anything to me, but on September 19th, she published this in the Wall Street Journal. Now, I'm assuming before they published it, they checked it for spelling and whatnot. This is just yesterday, sneaking in there on a Sunday. So, hopefully Goldman Sachs didn't get a crack at that before the markets open, because I don't know if that's still down here somewhere, but some of those Fed governors were getting investigated. I even saw Powell's name pop up in there. Let's see if we can find that investing, because you know how those Goldman Sachs guys go back and forth into the here's what Goldman Sachs tells his clients to buy during tough markets. So you got to be a pro to handle that one. Here's Apple, one of the stocks that one of the Fed governors was investing in before the taper, which may have begun depending on legalese. But let's get back here to Janet Yellen raising debt ceiling, which was published yesterday. So some people could have placed their orders early. I'm sure, hopefully the Fed would not be involved in that. Congress has raised or suspended the country's debt ceiling about 80 times since 1960, meaning that except when politically convenient, it's not very useful. U.S. has never defaulted, not once. I believe I could disprove that as well, but to save time, there is no valid reason to invite such an outcome, certainly not fiscal responsibility. Well, if Janet Yellen is saying fiscal responsibility, either she's turned sides and is setting up maybe a bigger criminal out there, kind of like you see with the mafia. And I know for some of you kids out there that haven't seen some of those old gangster movies, keep in mind JP Morgan executives being charged with the RICO statute. That goes down next month in October, but paying America's bills shouldn't be a controversial issue. There's a big difference between avoiding default by months or minutes. Now, I hear that the economic calendar for the U.S. begins in just 10 days, 11 days, October 1st, September 30th, October 1st. I don't know which time zone it ends in, but seems odd that Congress was on vacation, although that guy Joe Manchin seems to want to stick it to Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom and the other Democrats. But let's not get all political, even though trending now on CNBC, Democrats will put a debt limit suspension in a bill that aims to prevent. So there looks like they're trying to suspend it again. Here we go. There's government Yellen. I get confused. Is she Treasury Secretary or the Fed? Does she still talk to people at the Fed? Former Treasury Secretary Liu. The sooner the better to raise the debt ceiling. But the better for who? That is a question, because here Congress faces a September 30th deadline to fund the government. Separately, Treasury Secretary Yellen has told lawmakers that the U.S. will likely not be able to pay its bills sometime in October if Congress does not suspend or raise the debt ceiling. If you use some synthetic derivative math, you could peg that at October 1st. I would pick October 1st. Maybe if I was making a market, I'd be October 1st at October 15th. Give myself a little room for error. Let's call it September 28th at October 16th. And I'd throw an ounce of silver on that one. Of course, if Ross, the boss at the CFTC, were transparently okay with such a thing, but he seems like he's tied up right now. Whoever knows on these things. But Nancy Pelosi is going to vote on it with Chuck Schumer. So let's leave this aside, get back to the front page headlines, because the stock market was pummeled today. Again, some of you follow my Twitter feed where I've been posting things about the VIX. That's a volatility index, kind of like the canary in the coal mine. It's funny, even some of the option traders I used to trade with when I was a specialist on the New York Stock Exchange after graduating Wharton, in my confused youth, some of these guys didn't even know how to price this thing. Here you can see the VIX from 23.94 up to 28, which is actually was up 23.55%. That's a big increase in the volatility. But one way you could measure that would be looking at the VIXY, which is kind of like the VIX squared, VIX cubed, if you did three of them. Similar to that scene with Selena Gomez in The Big Short, where they're making side derivative markets, then people make side derivative markets. check out the action on this baby. You got to sometimes pick your chart to see, because that doesn't look too wild on the 1 day, like the 5 day, the 1 month, 3 month. Sometimes you really got to back out. You know, it changes by the minute as markets do. But if you look at the all here, well, back in 2011, I believe silver got to almost $50 back then. And it looks like the VIX got to almost 50,000. So even if somebody didn't buy options on this, which maybe I did, we'll leave that aside because this is not licensed financial advice. Obviously want to be clear on that. Wow, I wonder if whatever happened in 2011 happened again. That would be quite a move it made. Although I wonder if any of the market makers are even aware of, remember these symbols, it all gets complex at times, but the UVXY, this is an interesting index that in terms of if somebody wanted to know what was happening inside the Fed, in a way that the Fed couldn't even remember to hide, or the Exchange Stabilization Fund. You see this thing at 2731, and back in 2011, it closed at 730 million. Goodness, it's like if you wanted to find the inverse of Wall Street leverage, I mean, I would say this UVXY is like a whole field of canaries in Wall Street stock market coal mine. Actually, let's go back a second just so we can put this in context. This might show the print I wanted to make earlier, but we'll find it. See again, look at different times and different perspectives. So see a downward trend there in the 5-year. Even 5 years ago, this got up to, wow, closed at 20,390. It's happening pretty often, I guess. Although you wouldn't see it on that chart. Let's see the last year. Well, even in February, right at the end of January, beginning of February, when the LBMA later recognized that they were running out of silver, unlike Blackrock Silver, I know he's been on the show with Dave Gransley, they seem to be finding plenty of it in Nevada. But right around when the LBMA was running out of silver, this thing, which is at 27 bucks, was a 6-bagger for a day. It came in quickly. Kind of like my option trading P&L. I'm not sure I'm ready to share this yet, but I did find a graph in my TD Ameritrade, which shows basically what my account was worth. There's quite a spike right around when that UVXY index spiked. So perhaps I'll use that as a hedge. Again, please be careful. Don't do this at home unless you know what you're doing, which, I mean, who really does these days? But anyway, so that seems to be indicating some signs of short-term volatility in the market. It's hard to time these things. But again, you do have the debt ceiling coming due. Some people, myself included, I thought they might run into an issue. Now you can go in the Wall Street Journal and read this for yourselves. You're finally emerging from the pandemic crisis. So if you think that she may have actually been on the side of the people who helped bring us into that crisis, you might want to take that carefully. As always, make your own decisions. I'm just providing insight into what I look at and my best research, and you make what you will. I don't know what to make out of this. Sounds like she's getting desperate. Sounds like maybe the markets were sniffing that out. I mean, when you read some of these headlines, for example, gold firms on Evergrande risks. What the heck? How does gold firm? Was it? They got really hard on the Evergrande risk. Although the pre-Fed jitters capped the gains. This is like the magic bullet theory. Fortunately, my friend Yellen McNamara, who also seems to think that there's something special about that region that Blackrock Silver is in. I believe Galen will be checking in Wednesday. I am looking forward to getting back to more interviews, sometimes with different internet connections, depending on where you are. But we work around them, even obstacles that could have come up with Silverfest. I still think I know that I'm going to be here. Whoever's meant to be there will be there. Although, anyway, you can read here if you want to know how gold could actually how gold firms on Evergrande risks, how pre-Fed jitters cap gains. If you want to see if they can make any sense out of that, or how the Democrats will be able to put a debt limit suspension in a bill that aims to prevent government shutdown. Could all be a play on words. So again, when you're going to sites like this, you never know what they're trying to slip in. Fortunately, that's why I appreciate everyone who watches the Arcadia Economics channel, including Andrew Pollard, who has come onto the channel, takes questions. You can contact them there. So I know you, again, don't get confused with the other BlackRock that did not answer questions. These guys, I think they actually have the silver at least. Andrew will give you assays, drill results, any questions you have on the news. We're here, BlackRock Silver tripled their land position at Tonopah West. BlackRock drills multiple 1 kilogram per ton square equivalent intercepts at Tonopah West. I mean, they're sharing their drill results. You have people like Dave Kranzler, other known analysts. Again, I'm, a little more focused on the silver side, but my mom watches the show and I really care about the people watching the show. So always made sure, other smart people were giving a second opinion. And again, make your own decisions, but you can come to blackrocksilver.com. Phone number, call Andrew at 604-817-6044 or email at info@blackrocksilver.com if you do have any questions. With that said, thanks as always for being here. If you'd like to hear from Andrew yourself, where this video coming your way now.